It was a little piece of metal, just a little tiny, smaller than the size of my thumbnail, added to the pockets of a pair of work pants that would change the business. Not right away, but eventually.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Charles River Museum of Industry and Innovation. My name is Steve Guerrero, I'm the Director of Education here, and it's my pleasure to welcome you into our space. How many folks are here at the museum for the first time? We love that, awesome, all right, wonderful. So we have lots of great events like this. You can follow along with what we've got going on, charlesrivermuseum.org/events. And this place is a National Historic Landmark. This is the site of the first industrial labor strike in history, so in American history. If you have heard of the Mill Girls, the city of Lowell, everything that you know about that started here in Waltham. But tonight we're talking about a bit of a different avenue of textile history for America, an iconic brand, an iconic textile, and that is the Levi Strauss Company and the jeans that they make and beyond. I'm really glad to welcome Tracey Panek, who is an historian and is a curator of the archives at the Levi Strauss Company, and also writes for their blog, which is appropriately called Unzipped. But will you give a warm welcome to Tracey?
Thank you, Steve. I forgot to raise my hand when he said if it was your first time. It is my first time to the museum here, and what a great space to be in to present tonight. It's my honor to be here. I'm excited tonight to talk a bit about what I do at Levi Strauss & Company, a bit about the brand, the history, and to start us off tonight, I'm going to give you a glimpse at what it looks like to be 172 years young. Tonight I'll share a bit about the brand, our history, our founder. I'll also tell you about the connection to New England here and what we have to do with, what Levi's has to do with textile history right around this part of the country. But let's go back to the beginning and talk about Levi Strauss & Company, which began during the California Gold Rush in 1853. So in 3 years, 2028 will be 175 years old, which for an American apparel brand in the West is pretty rare, and we're still relevant today. It started with our founder. This is a very young Levi Strauss who was an immigrant to America from Germany, and he arrived in San Francisco when thousands of people were coming during the gold rush. He had brothers who were living in New York. He'd been staying there, learning about dry goods and the wholesale business, but he wanted to expand the company's business to the West Coast. So he took a couple of ships and came across Panama, and in a month he was in San Francisco, March 1853, and very quickly he started a business, he was very successful early on. In fact, because of the thousands of people that he was supplying products to, all the retail shops around the West, by the 1880s, he had a large fleet of sales representatives, a large crew of sales representatives like these men in their bowler hats. And they had territories as far north as the state of Washington, as far south as Arizona and New Mexico. And because of our location on the Pacific, we even had retailers in Hawaii, Australia, and as far away as Japan. So he was very successful early on, but it was a tiny innovation that would change the course of his business, and eventually it would transform fashion history. It was a little piece of metal, just a little tiny, smaller than the size of my thumbnail, added to the pockets of a pair of work pants that would change the business. Not right away, but eventually. This idea was one that was, the idea was conceived by one of Levi's customers, a tailor living in Reno, Nevada, who invited Levi Strauss and the company to take out a patent for this process of riveting pockets, creating stronger work pants so they wouldn't tear. The company agreed, and on May 20th, 1853, a US patent was granted, and it was called an improvement in fastening pocket openings, but we refer to it today as the birth of the modern blue jean or riveted denim pant. So it all started back in 1853 and in 1873, and in 2023, we celebrated the 150th anniversary of the 501, which is the name we gave to that original pant that we called waist overalls. So the earliest customers to wear those riveted denim pants would have been blue-collar working men. So they were miners, cowboys, railroad engineers, farmers, anyone who needed tough work pants. And most of them were working outdoors, and they needed a pant made of denim because it hid all that dirt. It was super sturdy, and with the addition of the rivets, it was especially strong. So here we have the connection to the textile industry here. For the first 50 years, we sourced all of our denim at the Amoskeag manufacturing plant, north of Lowell, Massachusetts, on the Merrimack River in Manchester, New Hampshire. And as you can see in our catalogs, we called out the fact that we purchased our denim from Amoskeag, and that was up until about 1915. And as you can see from that flyer there on the right side, those were the customers who we were working with and supplying those work clothes with. We're fortunate in the archives, which I manage, that we still have some of the early garments in our collection. In fact, we have a pair that goes back to 1873, 1874, which is quite remarkable given that San Francisco had an earthquake and fire in 1906, which destroyed our headquarters and most of San Francisco at the time. One of the things that we have learned from our history is that the company was always aware of the importance of branding every small element, and that included our rivets. And if you look very closely at the back of this rivet, you can just make out the imprint. So up at the top, I'll tell you what it is if you can't see it. PAT for patent, May 1873. It was a reference to that patent date. And then on the bottom, LS & Co, Levi Strauss Company, SF, San Francisco. So even on the tiniest little rivet, having that imprint and that branding was important. And because of that little bit of information, an archaeologist just outside of Alberta, Calgary, was able to contact me because he was doing an archaeological dig at the site of what is the farthest, it was the farthest western fort in Canada, and the location of the earliest Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And what we were able to confirm with that rivet is that there were settlers there, maybe even the Mounties themselves, who would have been wearing Levi's between 1873 and 1890. Very early on. Why do we know that? Because the rivet date changed when the patent expired. When the patent expired in 1890, the PAT, May 1873, dropped off the rivet. So that's one of the easiest ways that I can tell and date an early pair of Levi's. Branding was not only important to us, but we also created an illustration to help our customers know what to look for if they were looking for a genuine pair of Levi's. And in 1886, in anticipation of the patent expiring, we created our famous two-horse trademark. And if you look at the picture, it is two horses with a pair of our overalls attached in the middle. And the horses are facing opposite directions. They're trying to pull the Levi's apart, but as the tagline says, it's no use, they can't be ripped. It was a reminder to our customers of the quality and strength of our product. But it was also intentional, that illustration, because if you were an immigrant and didn't read or speak English, you could still just look for the two horses, or the two-horse brand as we were sometimes called, and then you would know you had a genuine pair of Levi's. Or if you were illiterate, same thing, you could just look for those two horses. By the way, that trademark, which was created in 1886, is one of the oldest continuously used trademarks in the world today. So the first lesson that we've learned about our history is to stay rooted. In other words, to be able to make sure that we stay authentic to who we have been all along. And the 2 points that I want to point out are branding, especially as I mentioned with the rivets, and quality. And as examples of that, an example of Levi's legendary branding and quality, here are Alf and Marlene Roberts. This photo was taken at their placer claim in Yukon Territory, Dawson City, the site of the original Klondike Gold Rush. And they had a placer claim, and every summer they would go dig around in it. You can see that they've discovered mammoth bones, mammoth tusks, dinosaur bones, and in addition, this is them at work with their plow, they discovered under layers of mud and dirt a pair of Levi's. Yeah. You could even wear those today. You can see there's a big tear on one of the legs from the plow, but it's an example of the quality of the product. And because of the branding, you can easily see that it's a Levi Strauss product. Take a look at that patch up at the top. Two horses, a little pair of our overalls in the middle, and the company name. The company was confident, so confident in the quality of its products that we offered a guarantee that we included in newspapers and advertisements. And the guarantee was, you will get a new pair if they rip. And you can see in this Calgary newspaper. One of the customers, because there were many, who took us up on this guarantee was a store owner in Maui, Hawaii, who wrote us a letter in 1942. And in the letter, he wrote, "Kindly send us a check for $4.50. Acting under your instructions, on enclosed circular, we hitched 2 Missouri mules to your pants and zip." And then on the bottom, you can see a paid stamp with the date for the check that was sent out. A few months later, it's now February 1943, and the same manager from Maui writes a letter and says, "We are returning your check. It hurts this writer's Scotch blood to do it, but the test was hardly fair. Mules are much stronger than horses, and even at that, the Levi's came near winning. Shortly after the test, one of the mules was so tired, he actually expired." Another example of the quality and strength of our products was written about in a thank you letter from another customer. All of these, by the way, we have in our archives. They're a great treasure trove for us to look into. So this letter is dated 1938. It was written by a man who not only wrote us the letter, but he sent us his Levi's. And in the letter, he described how he was driving in his car one day, and the car stalled. It broke down. He was at the side of the road. All that he had in his trunk was a pair of Levi's and some rope. So he tied them together, and then with the help of a friend, somebody who stopped, they were able to tow his car home with the Levi's. And we have this pair as a testament to the strength of our Levi's in our collection. And we refer to these as the Toe 501. So the second lesson that we've learned about our history is to always go back to the stories, because you can't make them up. The real stories are better than make-believe. And other stories that we have related to Levi's that we keep are stories ranging from Phyllis Gould, who was a Rosie the Riveter during World War II. She wore Levi's to the factory every day. She was one of the first 3 welders at the Kaiser shipyards in Richmond, California, making ships. Or there's the story of Sean Edwards, whose beloved Levi's jacket he wore just before he would get on a bull. He was a professional bull rider. And he would take the jacket off just before a ride, just before he would mount the bull, and he would wipe any moisture off on the rope, and then after the ride, he would use the same jacket to wipe off anything else that was on there. When he finally was willing to donate it to us, because it's now in our archives, there are bloodstains, there's straw, there's hay, and for 10 years, this was his beloved best friend, he said. Or there's the story of Matthew Smith. He's was a member of the Modoc Klamath tribe in Oregon, and he wore his Levi's to argue his freedom of religion case in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. And there's the story of Leo Hopkins, who was a veteran, one of the few black veterans to serve overseas during World War II. And when he returned home, he bought a Harley-Davidson motorcycle and a pair of Levi's, and he wore the Levi's to ride on his motorcycle, going out with the Berkeley Tigers, one of the oldest motorcycle clubs in the country. And as you can see, they were doing precision drills and weekend rides wearing their Levi's. These stories all helped to inspire us when we celebrated our 150th anniversary. This is one of the stories we told about one of the other oldest black motorcycle clubs in the country from Oakland, California. We called that campaign, very boldly, the greatest story ever worn. And we keep and maintain in our archives a story bank of Levi stories, and we map them. You can see here, we have this little kiosk in our museum, and it's also online. And each of these locations across the globe, if you click on one of those stories, you can learn about a Levi's fan who had a story there. And for our 150th anniversary, we went through the archives. We selected 3 stories that we would turn into advertisements. And the one of the stories that we selected was a story from Tbilisi, Georgia, that a man had told me about. His neighbor had exchanged his family cow for a pair of Levi's. So a week, and I should, as background, I should tell you that if you didn't already know, during the Cold War, behind the Iron Curtain, you could not buy Levi's at a typical store. You could get them on the black market or trade them, as in this case. A week after we aired this advertisement, it was during the Grammys, February 2023, I got an email from the man who told me the story. And he said, "We are all cheering here in Tbilisi because we recognize that story." And he sent me a picture of the man who actually made the exchange. Here he is. His name is Avtandil Lomsadze. I might be mispronouncing it, but they were delighted because they felt like the actor looked a lot like the actual man who did it. So the stories are told not only, Levi stories are not only told by people, but by the product itself. And what do I mean by that? Levi's and Denim have a unique way of wearing so that you can learn about the wearer without even knowing who he is personally, he or she. Let me give you a few examples from our collection. So here's a pair of Levi's worn by a blacksmith. And if you look up near the top, you might see a patch up on the top right, but you also look closely, there's a little bit of a V, a shadow that's coming down here. It is the outline of a pair of leather chaps worn over the top of his Levi's. And of course, it's the same on the back side, but you get some evidence, even without knowing exactly what he did, about how he was wearing his Levi's. Or there's Levi's that was worn by a young boy in Arkansas. This pair was found in a chicken coop. And the tears on the back, maybe they're from chicken wire, but we know something about him. What we know is that this is a pair of World War II Levi's. If you peek through the little tear at the top of the right back pocket, you will see some green fabric. That was the only time World War II was the only time we used green pocket fabric because we had restrictions during the war and that military fabric was available. We also know that the young man who wore these was right-handed and was a smoker. Think about that for a minute. Right-handed and a smoker. How would we know that? Well, over here on the right back thigh are matchstick strikes. So the woman who wore these Levi's purchased them in Bogota, Colombia, and she wore them throughout her travels all over the world, from places like Costa Rica, even to the base of Mount Everest. And she wore them to concerts, skateboarding, camping in Yosemite National Park, and when they could no longer fit her, she wrote about all of her adventures on the front of her Levi's and then donated them to our archives. Or there's a pair of Levi's worn by Al Armanino, a rancher during the 1930s, and check out the back of his Levi's. You can tell he was bending, he was doing his work because of all the beautiful honeycombing, as we call it, on the back knee of his 501s. This is one of our oldest pairs in the archives. We call it Double X. It dates to the 1870s, and it had several lives. We know, first of all, that they came from a mine because there's little drops of candle wax at the bottom, which is very common for some of our early ones. Candles would have been worn by miners in a little band around their heads, and then it would drip down. And we know from the knee marks, several men wore these, so probably more than one miner. And then it had a second life. It made its way in the late 1980s, early 1990s to Japan, where it was cut, hemmed, all the patches removed, and then filled in. And whoever wore them, the Japanese man most likely who wore them, a collector, would have worn them on the streets of Tokyo until they were finally sold back to us in 2013 so that they're a part of our archives today. And finally, a pair of Levi's. This is owned by a guy named Doug Hansen, who bought his Levi's 501s around 1970 from a farmer at a flea market. And they had tears and rips, but he got them for less than $1. And he was able to make his repairs, but do it in a stylish way. So we covered them up with colorful patches. He cut open the sides, the bottom hem of his Levi's, added a little extra fabric so he could accommodate his boots. And then he even added his name on the back thigh. You see Doug over there on the one side, Doug. All of these stories and the fact that the Levi's can be worn by more than one person, or they can just be worn over and over again, they're so strong, helped us to, helped inspire a campaign that we launched a couple years ago called Buy Better, Wear Longer. Lesson number 3, we have learned the importance of connecting to culture, especially in the 1960s. We are located in San Francisco, and during the 60s, when hundreds of young people started coming and settling in the Haight-Ashbury district of the city, which was just a stone's throw away from our headquarters, we were there and we took note. And we noticed that young people, this rising youth generation, were selecting jeans and Levi's as their clothing of choice. In fact, you can see it was not only blue jeans, but in this ad, another popular Levi's product was something called white Levi's, which had no blue or indigo at all. You can just make out our little red tab on the guy that's dancing there at the front. And those white Levi's came out of 1950s prohibitions where schools wouldn't let you wear blue jeans to school. Young people started bleaching them to get the blue out, and we decided to take the work out of it, so we introduced white Levi's. In the 60s, recognizing that young people were choosing blue jeans, we started using the name they were calling them. Up till then, we were calling them overalls, waist overalls. The 501 was our lot number, but we started adopting the name jeans. And we also went to the up-and-coming generations and leaders like this, Bill Graham, the promoter, and worked with him. He helped us to connect with one of the rising bands from the Haight-Ashbury, Jefferson Airplane. And in one all-night marathon session, Jefferson Airplane recorded 12 tracks, 6 of which we selected to play on the radio in 1967. This was the year of the Summer of Love. So I won't go through all the colors, but you can Google it. And there are 12 different colors that you can get white Levi's in, and they sing about all of those. By the end of the 1960s, at the famous outdoor festival, Woodstock, it was really a sea of denim. Young people in blue jeans, in denim jackets, and it wasn't just the fans, it was also the musicians. That includes John Sebastian from the Loving Spoonful here. He's wearing a white Levi's jacket that he's tie-dyed. And one of the fans who was wearing a pair of Levi's 501 jeans was a man named Greg Cowper. And he bought a pair of 501s, patched the knees, and he had a pet owl. So he painted a yellow owl on one of the legs, that left leg. You can just see it. The bottom tail of the owl has a little red peace sign. He painted a matching yellow owl on the hood of his Oldsmobile station wagon, which he and his buddy drove to Woodstock. And he was photographed near the front of the stage on Saturday. And that's Greg holding the balloon, laying down in the crowd. And you can just make out the yellow of his 501s in the picture. That little bit of bird that he painted, the owl. 2 decades later, 1989, young people were again wearing blue jeans, this time wearing them to climb on top of the Berlin Wall as it fell. Levi's and blue jeans had become a symbol of youth, of freedom, and appropriately, the young people were wearing them as they were issuing in the end of the Cold War. The final point I want to make is to stay forever young. That's something we've learned at Levi's and connecting to the youth who wear our products. So a couple years after the Berlin Wall fell, in 1991, when you could buy Levi's in places like Moscow, we got a letter from one of the first customers there who wrote us, "While wearing your jeans, I feel like a 15-year-old schoolgirl." It was that kind of sentiment about freedom and youth that has really been connected to Levi's for such a long time, including for a lot of the icons in music, like Kurt Cobain of Nirvana, Taylor Swift, who wore them on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine, 2018, and of course, Beyoncé. So this is her wearing a pair of Levi's cutoffs at Coachella, her homecoming tour in 2018. And by the way, this was not seeded by the company. This was her choice to wear them. But I think that she was a loyal Levi's wearer and had been since we had worked with her back in 2001. So take a look at our Levi's poster here. That's a picture of Superlows, a product that we sold in the early 2000s. You wore it really low on your waist. She was a member of Destiny's Child at the time. And as she would later describe, no other big brands would look at them. She said they were curvy country black girls and no other design brand wanted to work with them, but Levi's was willing to. And I like to think that that's why just this past year, she was willing to work with us again for the new campaign that we call Reimagine. And by the way we've spelled Reimagine is intentional, 2 I's. Why did we do that, and why did we call our new campaign that? That's because a year ago, last March, Beyoncé came out with her groundbreaking album, country album, Cowboy Carter. And on it, she included a song called Levi's, spelled with 2 I's. So knowing that came out, we were able to connect with her, and our strategy was to remake several classic Levi's ads. So here's the original laundrette. I started with the Beyoncé version when I began my talk, but this was an ad from the UK. It launched in 1985, the day after Christmas, Boxing Day, and really sent 501 sales soaring. It was a young heartthrob named Nick Kamen who wore these, and he undressed through his Levi's in a washing machine to the tunes of Marvin Gaye singing Heard It Through the Grapevine. But of course, for the Beyoncé version, a woman of color, singing her own music. She's helped us to reimagine what it means to be Levi's almost 175 years later. and has helped us to keep the rubric, Levi's is the youngest, oldest brand in the world. And that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Tracey. That was great. Thank you very much, Tracey. We'll take some questions. If you wait for me to come over to you with the microphone, just because even though we can hear you, we want to make sure people who are watching later can hear you. So,
Hi, thanks. That was a great talk. I got two great Levi stories.
Okay.
One in 1975, I was in high school learning Russian, and we got to go to
Wait,
Russia.
high school where?
In Newton.
Okay.
Learning Russian. We won one of the earliest exchange groups to go to Russia.
Cool.
At that time, and we got to meet with a lot of high school kids from Russia. Got very friendly, and I exchanged my Levi's with one of them. 1975.
Not an uncommon thing to do.
Newton North.
Similar
I'll
story up
talk to
here?
you later.
Cool. And you have another one as well?
Second one, yeah.
Thank you.
1980, I drove with a couple buddies up to Alaska. We drove up the Alcan Highway, and it was like 1,000 miles of gravel road to drive. No problem getting there. Coming back, we kicked a rock up into our gas tank, and it punctured a hole and dumped our gas. We were able to get replacement gas, and we cut off a patch from our Levi's. We put seal oil, this goopy stuff on it, attached it to our gas tank. This is up in the Yukon. You showed pictures of the
Okay.
Yukon. And we drove all the way back to New York from there.
I love it.
It was great.
Yeah, we got to give you a hand for that. So I got to talk to you after, because I got to add your stories to my story bank. Those are great.
Can you tell me if this is a true story, that Levi's used to have the rivets on the crotch?
Yep.
And my understanding was they switched to zippers because men wearing them, the rivets would heat up when they're near the fireplace all the time and became very uncomfortable. Is that the reason why they switched them from rivets to?
So there are some truths in that. Let me tell you about it. So what he's asking is about our oldest Levi's. We predate the zippers. So the very first Levi's were made with button fly. We still have button fly today, just like my 501s that I'm wearing. And there were rivets on the pockets, rivets on, and there was also an extra rivet at the base of the button fly, where there's also a stress point. So the question about whether they were removed because somebody was standing near a fire. So the true story is that it was one of our presidents. His name was Walter Haas. He was a big outdoorsman, and he was out camping around a campfire. And that crotch rivet heated up in a delicate place. So they had to go. But that wasn't the reason for the zipper gene. The 505 zipper gene came around in 1967. It was a slimmer gene and it appealed to young people. That's when we introduced it then. So you got part of the story right, but yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm a fashion design major. I guess my only question would be essentially, when it comes to like entrepreneurship or brand ownership, what would be like your best advice? Because you're a historian, of course, you've seen over 150 years of Levi's. What would be like the one thing to really build that kind of brand longevity and create that community within a brand, I guess?
Well, I'll go back to the first point I made, which was you got to stay close to your roots. Whatever you create, stay authentic to them. So for us, we haven't deviated much from our products. Now, we might offer some new fashion fits, but the 501 is still a classic product. And it hasn't changed much. It's still a button fly. It's still got those rivets, maybe not the crotch rivet, but it's essentially the same gene, and we were very protective of it. When we do collaborations with designers, they usually start with me in the archives, and I'll show them some of our oldest, and they'll get a sense of what our aesthetic is, because it has to be Levi's, and whatever their design is, we merge the both, but the identity of both products remains the same. Yeah, good luck with your work.
Hi, I'm so excited you're here. So I teach entrepreneurship at RISD, and one of the star brands I talk about is Levi's.
Yay.
And I'm so excited to hear I have so many more stories from my kids. But when I start by, as I say, show of hands, and these are kids who are international,
Yeah.
I say, who here has owned a pair of Levi's? Every hand goes up. And the second part is I
love
have a
that.
pair of Levi's from when I was a freshman at RISD, and I cannot throw them out. And I'm happy to say I can still wear them.
Oh,
They still
impressive,
fit me all
yeah.
these years later. Thank you for that. But they've lasted, I can't even say how many years. And every so often I put them on, I think, they're still good.
And you know what? They get better with age. Yeah.
Don't we all?
That's right. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I love that.
How did the rise of denim as a pant material, clothing material, parallel Levi's? Was Levi's like the originator of that? Did denim pre-exist it? Like how did that arc?
Yeah, good question. What's the relationship between Levi's and denim? So Levi's did not invent denim. Denim had been around for a long time. In fact, the word denim and the word jean had been used historically in Europe, but it wasn't the same fabric. For America, for the American brand Levi's, it was always 100% American denim, produced first here in New England and sourced at Amoskeag. We eventually would go down to North Carolina at the Cone Mills and use their denim, but I would say were more a reflection of what was happening. So the fact that there were textile mills, and you could, and they were producing huge amounts, and we could source that from them to make our products, made it easier for us. I will say that we certainly helped in the modern evolution of denim. So if you're a denim head and you love Levi's and denim, you probably want to cuff your jeans and show off your selvage. Anybody a denim head here who loves? Okay, so you want to show off your selvage, which is the end of the denim roll. And originally, if you had a loom from the Amoskeag mill or the Lowell, Massachusetts mills, it would have been, for the denim, maybe 29 inches wide. And that was perfect to accommodate a leg of jeans, because then you could sew up the jeans and you still had the edge, the raw edge that would show. When denim and blue jeans just went global, especially in the 70s, and the denim producers were trying to keep up with the demand. They doubled the width of the looms, and of course they got rid of the shuttle looms. They cut the raw denim down the middle, so you lost the selvage. That happened about 1984, 1980, 85. So in that sense, there was some give and take between what was happening and how Levi's affected that. Yeah, thanks for your question.
The fashion world is debating how often you should wash your jeans.
Yes.
And many people are coming in at 6 months, 1 year, 2 years.
Or not at all.
Mine need to be cleaned after a week. How do you keep wearing them for 2 years or a year?
Remarkably, you don't need to wash them very much. It's part of the reason denim made sense as a workwear fabric. It's dark blue, it hides the dirt, you can let them air out and they'll still be fine. You can spot clean them. When we have pieces that go back to the 1870s, and unless they've been, there's only a couple of exceptions where there's a particular scent that's not great, but it's a petroleum scent, and it's usually because the denim was outside, the Levi's were being used for some kind of oil production, and so they've got that oily smell. But otherwise, the scent doesn't say, and the denim is remarkably hard wearing. It doesn't really need a lot of washing. I've had the bull rider that I told you the story about, he swore by not ever washing your Levi's because he said it helped him to stick the bull better. It would get a slick on it, and he would, yeah.
I have kind of like a two-part question. So first, I guess I wonder if you have any interesting stories related to like the unique indigo dyeing of like Japan and how they kind of changed different, the process of making the denim. Like if you have any cool, unique stories about that or anything.
Well, Japan has an interesting connection to denim, of course. Their craftsmanship is amazing. Their denim production. So I just mentioned how in the mid 80s, a lot of the denim manufacturers went to double wide looms, and they no longer had the need for those shuttle looms. Well, guess where they were sent? A lot of them were sent to Japan. So a lot of the denim that we use for our products now comes from Japan because they have the shuttle looms that can allow us to create selvage denim products. I appreciate their craftsmanship and their love of Levi's. I have sourced some of our dead stock Levi's going to places like Harajuku in Tokyo and going to their vintage shops. Yeah.
That's really cool. And I guess my second part is, like you spoke about how now you guys are sourcing from them because of the shuttle looms, but
Yep.
I know like in California, it's one of like the biggest American jean manufacturers is there. What kind of like, is there a commitment that Levi's has made, I guess maybe to like manufacturing in America, or the since it's left, you know, like how kind of where things are being sourced from, or like the majority of the factories, stuff like that?
So we have small productions in the U.S., but not like we do. So the reality of the global brand that we are, people would not pay what it would cost to produce in the U.S. I hope that changes, but a lot of that production is happening overseas. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
I have a question. What happened to Strauss? When did the trademark become Levi?
What happened to Levi? So we call him Levi, and actually employees called him Uncle Levi. So Levi never married, but he had 4 nephews, his sister's sons, and they took over the business when he passed away in 1902. One of those sons had a daughter who married into the Haas family, and the Haas family, they had a grocery store, but they were renowned, and especially the one that the brother-in-law that married into the family, he had trained in accounting. He joined the company, and he was the first in a line of Haas family members to continue the legacy of Levi. So we still have the great-great-grand-nephew of Levi, who is connected to the company. He's the last serving CEO. His name is Bob Haas. And if you're familiar with University of California at Berkeley's Haas School of Business, that's the family that is the descendant of Levi. Yeah, thanks.
Hi, how was the effect of other brands of blue jeans competition influenced Levi's?
Well, we're still around. 1890, the patent expires, and we had competitors immediately. And we've gone through, nearly 175 years of ups and downs, natural disasters, fashion influence, disco period, designer jeans. There are times when it's ebbed and flowed, but in general, as I mentioned to our design student over here, sticking to what is important and what the brand has always been about has helped us, I think, to create a classic product that is really timeless and that continues. It's hard to argue with a brand that began the category. I can tease my competitors. They're not quite as old as we are. My buddy at Carhartt, but you stay true to where you started, and yeah, we've done okay.
Yeah, just a comment about the culture and when and where you could wear blue jeans. I remember back around 1960, maybe late 50s, there was a rock and roll show with Bobby Darin in Shrewsbury at an amusement park, and you could not wear blue jeans.
Really? So we went public. As a company, we've been public twice. In the 70s, and then Bob Haas, the great-great-grandnephew of Levi, took the company private until 2019. And I was able to go to Wall Street when we became public again. But there was a no blue jean policy on the trading floor. They made an exception when we came. So it's still around, there's and the famous story, well, maybe I'll share this story. You've heard the term Canadian tuxedo, maybe some of you. So that story comes from an experience that happened to Bing Crosby when he was in Canada. So Bing was, American actor, performer, White Christmas, but he was also an avid hunter and fisherman, and he wore Levi's and denim. And he was up in Canada. He was on a hunting fishing trip, and he went back to his hotel in Vancouver, and he was dressed in all denim, and they didn't admit him. And the story goes that a bellboy recognized him and then apologized and welcomed him back in. Well, Levi Strauss Company heard about the story and made him a special Levi's tuxedo jacket to be worn with a pair of 501s, and he wore it to a movie opening. And the term Canadian tuxedo comes from Bing's wearing double denim. Yeah.
Hi again. I got one more question.
Okay.
Just because I was curious on the logo change from Levi's, just kind of like even to now, like where the idea for the red tag came from and why they left the two horses, or why they just kind of made that change.
So two horses still there. You got a pair of 501s. Check the back, right back pocket. So we still use the two horse today. So this, we call it the bat wing. And if you look at the back of a pocket, it is the top part of our pocket. You see those two little arches, we call them archivists. That's just the top of the back pocket. So that came out in 1967. You asked also about the little red tab. So on a pair of 501s or a classic pair of Levi's, there's a little red tab on the right back pocket that says Levi's. So the story was that in the 1930s, a lot of competitor brands were starting to use the same design on the back pocket because we hadn't trademarked it. And one of our very savvy salesmen, he was at Santa Cruz Beach, south of San Francisco, and he was looking at what people were wearing. And this is just an occupational hazard. What do they got on? And he came up with the idea that if you added a little bit of red ribbon in that, it's a color that contrasts with the blue denim. If you added that to the back pocket, you could see it from a distance. So he came up with the idea. His name was Chris Lucier. And that happened in the 30s, and then by the 1940s we got wise and we trademarked the pocket style. So if you try to replicate that, our legal department will come after you.
What is now considered to be either the biggest fashion error or corporate error that Levi's has made in the 170 odd years?
Gosh, I'm sure there's lots of errors. It's a funny, in the 1950s, we introduced a product called spikes. And we introduced that they were brightly colored pants, kind of a pegged pant. And we used boxes of Jell-O when we did our advertisements. You could get the orange Jell-O spike pant, just to give you a sense of what the color is like, or the lemon Jell-O spike pant. Those were a huge flop. It was the 1950s, and we were just ahead of our time because it wasn't until the 60s that color explosion happened. So yeah, we've done things that didn't work out. I think that one of the staying powers of the company is the resilience of the company. I'll tell you one other quick story, which is maybe not a faux pas, but it's an example of how resilient the company is. And of course, I'm the historian, so I'm looking way back in time. 1853, Levi arrives in San Francisco. It's the height of the gold rush. He's doing incredibly well. 1857, he sends back gold to New York, to Wall Street. His brothers are there. He sends about $80,000 in gold on a ship. Now imagine, this is 4 years after he started his business, $80,000 in gold. By the way, listed on the ship's manifest, Levi Strauss Company was right after the banks, right after Wells Fargo and the other banks. So they were doing that well. Well, the ship takes off, it goes down, and then it goes down from San Francisco to Panama. This is before the canal, so all of the contents, the gold, is put onto a train, and then it's shipped to the Atlantic side of Panama, where it gets on another steamship and it makes its way up to New York. But off the coast of the Carolinas, it hits a storm, and the ship goes down. All the gold with it. All the gold with it. And Levi's just started his business 4 years in. He has to just get on with it. It's one of the stories that I tell people. A few years ago, so fast forward to late 80s, early 90s, a group of people come up with money and they build a submarine called Nemo. And they find where the ship went down. And they go down and they get all the gold and they get parts of the ship. They auction off the gold. We don't get any. It's, it's expensive. But a couple of years ago, I went and my husband and I drove to Reno, Nevada from San Francisco to an auction where some of the pieces of the ship and a few other things were auctioned off. And I bought a piece of the copper hull of the ship, which is now one of our prized possessions in the archives, because it's a reminder that even after losing that much money early on, just persevered. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Tracey. Thank you so much, everybody.